They say blood is thicker than water, but what they don't tell you is that sometimes blood is the thing that drowns you. I'm Natalie, and I need to tell you about the day I discovered my own mother had secretly disowned me in a family group chat, calling me a lowly teacher who wasn't worth keeping around. The shocking part? She did it the weekend before Mother's Day, like the universe had a sick sense of irony. I couldn't believe the words I was reading. Timestamps, screenshots, proof that the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had spent months systematically erasing me from their lives because my career wasn't prestigious enough for their country club conversations. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. But here's the secret they never saw coming. That rejection was the best thing that ever happened to me. See, my family was obsessed with status. My sister Victoria was a surgeon, my brother James was a lawyer, and I was just a kindergarten teacher who'd chosen meaning over money. They humiliated me at every family gathering, stuck me at the kids' table at Thanksgiving, mocked my handmade gifts while praising designer handbags, and slowly edited me out of their perfect family portrait like I was a mistake they needed to correct. The infidelity wasn't that they cheated on me with success. It was that they taught me love had conditions, prerequisites, a salary requirement I'd never meet. But what happened next changed everything, because over 3 years after they disowned me, I found myself on a stage with the governor, accepting a major state appointment, while my mother sat in the audience planning to rush the stage and steal credit for my success. Then the truth came out, and 500 people watched me expose their lies with receipts they didn't know I'd saved. This isn't just a story about family drama or getting revenge on people who backstabbed you when you needed them most. It's about what happens when you stop fighting for a seat at a table that was never meant for you and build your own instead. It's about the day I chose dignity over their approval, self-worth over their validation, and real family over biological obligation. They wanted me to stay small, stay quiet, stay grateful for whatever scraps of attention they threw my way. But karma had different plans. What they didn't know was that their lowly teacher was about to become someone they'd desperately want to claim. And by then, I'd already learned the most important lesson: that protecting your peace matters more than keeping their peace. So let me tell you exactly how it all went down. From the moment I saw those screenshots to the moment I reclaimed my name on live television, with my real family watching and my fake family scrambling to rewrite history they thought nobody had documented. I still remember the exact moment my phone buzzed that night, May 7th, the weekend before Mother's Day. I was grading papers at my kitchen table when Rachel's message popped up. "Natalie, you need to see this." My hands shook as I opened the screenshots she'd sent, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. There, in the family group chat I'd been removed from without warning, my own mother had written, "Natalie is no longer part of this family. She's just a lowly teacher with no real ambition." The words hit me like a betrayal I never saw coming. And suddenly, every awkward family dinner, every dismissive comment, every time I'd felt humiliated made perfect sense. They'd been building toward this moment of ultimate rejection, and I'd been too blind to see the shocking truth. The screenshots kept coming, each one worse than the last, and the karma I'd always believed in felt like a cruel joke. My brother James, the hotshot lawyer, had written, "Good riddance." She was always an embarrassment at our events anyway. My sister Victoria, the celebrated surgeon, added, "Imagine choosing to teach kindergarten when you could have done something meaningful with your life." I felt backstabbed by the very people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and the family drama I'd tried so hard to avoid had finally swallowed me whole. Rachel, my cousin, and the only one with a conscience, had risked everything to show me these messages, whispering through text, "They've been trashing you for months, Natalie. This is just the worst of it." Every word dripped with vengeance against my choices, my dignity stripped away in a group chat I couldn't even defend myself in. But here's what they didn't know. What they couldn't possibly have known that night as they mocked my profession and cheated me out of basic family respect. Over 3 years later, I'd be standing on a stage with Governor Richardson, accepting an award for transforming education in our state, while cameras rolled and 500 people applauded. My mother would be in that audience, straightening her Chanel suit and preparing to rush the stage like she'd been my biggest supporter all along. The infidelity to our family bond would come full circle, and I'd have a choice to make. Let her steal my moment or finally reclaim my self-worth in front of everyone. The payback wasn't something I'd planned, but sometimes justice writes its own script. That Mother's Day morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and an inbox full of fake pleasantries. "Happy Mother's Day, sweetheart," from a woman who'd literally disowned me 12 hours earlier. The hypocrisy burned worse than the initial rejection, and I realized this family betrayal wasn't just about me being a teacher. It was about control, about maintaining their perfect image, about punishing anyone who dared to find meaning outside their narrow definition of success. I thought about responding, about defending myself, about begging them to see my worth. But something shifted inside me. Instead of fighting for a seat at their table, I decided to build my own. And the revenge would be in my silence, not my screams. I blocked every number, deleted every social media connection, and disappeared from their world as completely as they'd erased me from that group chat. My mother's text, "Don't be dramatic, Natalie, we're just concerned about your future," went unanswered, floating in digital space like the lied promises of unconditional love. Rachel kept me updated through a secret email account, sending proof of their continued gossip, their theories about where I'd gone, their irritation that I wouldn't come crawling back. Rachel kept her head down. She was the neutral cousin no one paid attention to, which is exactly why she could see everything. "Your mom told everyone at the country club you're going through something," Rachel wrote. "She's already rewriting history." But I wasn't going through something. I was going toward something, and they'd never see it coming. The truth they'd never understand was that their rejection had set me free, even though it shamed every memory I'd cherished of family gatherings and childhood holidays. I stopped trying to fit into their world of status symbols and superficial achievements, stopped measuring my worth by their impossible standards. The shocking part wasn't that they'd cut me off. It was that I felt lighter without them, like I'd been carrying their disappointment my whole life and finally set it down. Little did they know, their lowly teacher was about to become someone they'd desperately want to claim, and by then, I'd already built a family that chose me back. But first, I had to survive the hardest part, learning to live without the people who were supposed to love me, no matter what. Growing up in the Morrison family meant understanding one brutal truth. Your value was measured by your salary, your title, and how good you looked in the annual Christmas card. My mother, Patricia Morrison, wasn't just obsessed with status. She weaponized it, turning every family gathering into a performance where Victoria and James were the stars, and I was the stagehand nobody thanked. I couldn't believe how naturally it came to her, the way she'd introduce my siblings with their full credentials. Victoria, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at Memorial Hospital, and James, Senior Partner at Whitmore and Associates. While I got a dismissive, "and Natalie teaches children." The betrayal was in her tone, the way she made my life's work sound like a placeholder until I figured out something better. Every dinner, every holiday, every supposedly loving moment was contaminated by this unspoken ranking system, where I'd always come last. The micro-humiliations started small, so small I gasped them off as accidents or oversights at first. Thanksgiving 2018, when I was 29, I arrived to find everyone seated at the formal dining room, except me. "Oh, sweetie, we ran out of chairs at the main table," my mother said with theatrical concern, gesturing to a folding chair squeezed between my teenage cousins at what we called the kids' table. James smirked into his wineglass while Victoria didn't even look up from her phone, and the family drama I'd been sensing for years crystallized into something undeniable. I sat there, surrounded by children discussing Minecraft, while the adults discussed investments and vacation homes in Tuscany. The humiliation wasn't just about the chair. It was about being systematically erased from the adult conversation, from the family's real life. Christmas that same year brought another calculated slight that left me shamed in front of everyone I loved. I'd spent weeks handcrafting a photo album for my mother, filled with restored pictures of her childhood, her wedding, our family milestones, hours of work, meaning in every page. She opened it in front of 20 relatives, glanced through it for maybe 10 seconds, and said, "Oh, how handmade. That's sweet, Natalie." Then she turned to Victoria's gift, a designer handbag worth $3,000, and literally squealed with delight, hugging my sister like she'd just cured cancer. The contrast was deliberate, the message clear. Your effort means nothing compared to their money. I watched my mother parade that handbag around the room, showing off the label, while my album sat discarded on the gift table like recycling. The infidelity to the values she'd supposedly taught us about thoughtfulness and family was complete. But the real pattern became impossible to ignore during what I started calling the Golden Child Showcase years, 2019 and 2020, when every family event became a stage for Victoria and James's achievements while I provided the applause. Victoria's promotion came with a catered dinner party for 50 people at the country club, complete with a speech from my mother about knowing she'd be extraordinary since birth. James's wedding was a 300-person affair covered by the local society pages, with my mother giving interviews about her accomplished children while somehow never mentioning I existed. When I got Teacher of the Year for my district, a genuine honor I'd worked toward for 5 years, my mother's response was a text. "That's nice, honey. Don't forget Victoria's charity gala is next Saturday." I wasn't invited to be a guest. I was expected to help with coat check. The vengeance I started feeling wasn't hot and explosive. It was cold and clarifying, like ice water finally waking you up. The breaking point almost came at James's 30th birthday party, when my mother literally introduced me wrong to her friends. "This is Natalie. She works with kids," she told Mrs. Henderson from the yacht club. And when I corrected her, "I'm a teacher, actually an educator," my mother laughed and said, "Same thing, darling. Not everyone can be a surgeon." The way Victoria and James exchanged that look, that knowing glance that said, "Here we go again with Natalie's sensitivity," made me realize this wasn't accidental dismissal. This was coordinated emotional violence, a family betrayal so deep it had become their normal. They'd created a narrative where my choices made me less than, where my passion for teaching was evidence of low ambition rather than high purpose, where my dignity was something they could trade for a punchline at their fancy parties. What they never asked, what they never cared to know, was why I'd chosen teaching in the first place, or what it actually meant to me. They never heard about Marcus, the 7-year-old in my second year, who couldn't read a single word in September, but was devouring chapter books by May, whose mother cried in my classroom because I'd given her son a future. They never saw the payback that comes from watching a child's face light up with understanding, the karma of knowing you've changed someone's trajectory forever. To them, I was stuck in a lowly profession because I'd failed to achieve something better. But the shocking truth was simpler and more damning. I'd found meaning they couldn't understand because they'd never looked for meaning in anything. And that difference, that fundamental gap in values, was about to matter more than any of us could imagine. Rachel's message that Mother's Day Eve didn't just contain one screenshot. It contained 17, each one time-stamped, each one a piece of evidence I'd later guard like sacred receipts of my family's betrayal. "Natalie, I'm shaking as I send these," she wrote. "But you deserve to know the truth about what they've been saying behind your back." I opened the first image and felt my stomach drop. April 15, 2021, my mother's message in the family group chat I'd been silently removed from 3 weeks earlier. "I've made a decision about Natalie," she'd written with the cold authority of a CEO announcing layoffs. "She is no longer someone I consider my daughter, and I'd appreciate if none of you mention her name at upcoming events." The karma I'd believed in, the justice I'd hoped would somehow balance the scales. All of it felt like a cruel joke as I read those words. I scrolled through screenshot after screenshot, watching my family discuss my erasure like I was a failed business venture they needed to cut losses on. James had written, "Finally, I was tired of making excuses for her at firm events." "What does your sister do?" was always so embarrassing. Victoria added, "She backstabbed this family by choosing that career, honestly. Dad would be so disappointed." My father had died when I was 19, and they were using his memory as a weapon, claiming to know what he'd think when he'd been the one person who'd actually supported my dreams. The infidelity to his memory hurt almost as much as their rejection of me, this rewriting of history to justify their cruelty. Rachel had highlighted one message in red, my mother writing, "Natalie made her choice. We don't have room in our lives for people who settle for mediocrity." But the most shocking revelation came in a screenshot from May the 2nd, just 5 days before Rachel sent everything to me. The family had been planning a Mother's Day brunch at the Riverside Club, the same prestigious venue where they hosted all their important gatherings, and someone asked if they should at least tell Natalie she's not invited. My mother's response was swift and brutal. "Why would we? She's not family anymore. I don't want her dramatic reaction ruining my day." Victoria had sent a laughing emoji. James had written, "Agreed. Let her figure it out on her own." The vengeance in their words wasn't hot anger. It was cold calculation, the kind that comes from people who've convinced themselves they're the victims. They'd cheated me out of basic human decency and somehow made themselves feel righteous about it. Rachel's final message that night was the one that changed everything. "Natalie, I have more if you need them, but I couldn't keep watching this happen without telling you. They're planning to act like you just drifted away if anyone asks. They're already practicing the story." She'd included screenshots of my mother coaching Victoria and James on what to say. "Just say Natalie's focusing on her career and we respect her space. Make it sound mutual." The family drama I'd been living through had an entire PR strategy behind it, and I couldn't believe the level of manipulation required to erase someone while making yourself look noble. But here's what hit me hardest. Rachel had risked everything to show me this. She'd betrayed their trust to honor basic human decency, and that made her more family than any of them had ever been. I sat at my kitchen table until 3 a.m., reading and rereading every screenshot, burning every word into my memory until I could recite them without looking. The humiliation of knowing they'd discussed my worthlessness so casually, like I was a disappointing stock investment or a failed restaurant choice, it was almost too much to process. But somewhere around 2 a.m., something shifted inside me. The pain transformed into clarity, the grief into determination. I opened a new folder on my computer, labeled it Receipts, May 7th, 2021, and saved every single screenshot with dates and timestamps intact. I wasn't planning revenge right then. I was just documenting the truth, preserving evidence of the day my family tried to rewrite me out of existence. Little did I know these files would become the most important thing I'd ever saved. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. If they wanted me gone, I'd give them exactly that, but on my terms. I blocked my mother's number first, then Victoria's, then James's. Each deletion felt like reclaiming a piece of my dignity they'd stolen. I deactivated my Facebook, changed my Instagram to private, and removed anyone with the last name Morrison, deleted the family group email chain from my contacts. Rachel was the only one I kept. Our secret connection maintained through an encrypted email account she'd set up specifically for this. "I'm going ghost," I told her. "If they ask, tell them you don't know where I am." Her response came immediately. "I've got you. Go live your life, Natalie. The payback will be in your happiness." And she was right. But the payback would also be in something else, something none of us could predict that morning as I watched the sun rise on my first day as an orphan by choice. 3 weeks after I went completely off their radar, I met Marcus Chen at a community education fundraiser I almost didn't attend. He was volunteering as the event photographer, and I was there representing my school's literacy program, both of us hiding in the corner by the dessert table trying to avoid small talk. "You look like someone who'd rather be grading papers right now," he said with this gentle smile that somehow didn't feel intrusive. And I couldn't believe I actually laughed. My first real laugh since the betrayal. We talked for 2 hours about everything except my family, And when he asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime, I said yes without the usual anxiety about whether I was enough. Marcus didn't care about prestigious titles or country club memberships. He cared about kindness, about purpose, about the kind of meaning my family had mocked me for choosing. That coffee date turned into weekly dinners, and suddenly I was building something beautiful in the space where my family's rejection had left a crater. Marcus knew I'd cut ties with my family, but he never pushed for details I wasn't ready to share. He just created this safe space where I could heal without performing recovery for anyone's comfort. 6 months into dating, he introduced me to his niece Lily, a 7-year-old girl he'd been raising since his sister died in a car accident 2 years earlier. The moment I met her, something clicked into place. She was shy, struggling in school, convinced she was stupid because reading was hard for her. "I can help with that," I told Marcus, and the look of relief and gratitude on his face felt like the opposite of every dismissive glance my mother had ever given me. Working with Lily became my evening joy, watching her confidence grow as words started making sense, and the karma of finding this small family felt like the universe apologizing for my biological one. The infidelity my birth family had committed against the concept of love was being healed by these two people who chose me without conditions. By the end of 2021, Marcus and I had moved in together, and Lily was calling me Aunt Natalie in this sweet, unsure voice that made my heart ache with purpose. Rachel would send me occasional updates through our secret email. "Your mom asked me again where you are. I said I don't know." And I'd feel this strange mixture of vindication and sadness. They'd wanted me gone, and now they couldn't stand not knowing where I'd gone or what I was doing. But I wasn't hiding out of spite. I was genuinely building a life so full of meaning that their approval became irrelevant. I got promoted to lead curriculum developer for the district, started mentoring new teachers, wrote grants that brought $500,000 in resources to underserved schools. The payback wasn't that they couldn't see my success. It was that their absence made my success more authentic, untainted by their transactional love or conditional pride. Marcus proposed on a random Tuesday in our kitchen while I was making breakfast, and Lily was doing homework at the table. No fancy restaurant, no performance, just, "Natalie, I want to build the rest of my life with you if you'll let me." I said yes through tears that were nothing like the ones I'd cried reading those screenshots a year earlier. These were tears of relief, of finally understanding what family was supposed to feel like, of realizing that the people who are supposed to love you shouldn't make you feel small. We got married in a tiny ceremony with 12 people who actually cared about us. Rachel was my only guest with the last name Morrison, and she cried the whole time, whispering, "You look so happy, Natalie. You look free." After we married, I became Natalie Chen Morrison, and for the first time, my last name felt like a choice, not a cage. The shocking truth nobody tells you about cutting off toxic family is that sometimes the grief doesn't last forever. Sometimes you build something so much better that you stop mourning what you lost. Lily started calling me Mom in the spring of 2023, and we made it official through adoption that summer. Her choice, her timeline, her healing process that somehow mirrored my own. I couldn't believe this was my life now. Coming home to a man who celebrated my work instead of diminishing it. Raising a daughter who looked at me like I hung the moon because I'd helped her discover she was smart after all. My career kept expanding. I was invited to speak at education conferences, served on state curriculum committees, advised nonprofits on literacy programs. Every success felt clean, earned without the contamination of my family's judgment or their need to rank me against Victoria and James. Rachel told me my mother had started saying, "Natalie's doing her own thing," at social events. This vague explanation that let her save face without admitting what she'd done. But I didn't care about their narrative anymore. I was too busy writing my own. By early 2024, I'd become exactly the kind of person my family would have bragged about if they'd still been in my life. But the beautiful irony was that I'd become that person specifically because they weren't. Without their constant criticism, I'd flourished. Without their obsession with prestige, I'd found real impact. Without their conditional love, I'd discovered what unconditional actually meant. The dignity I'd reclaimed wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. Right to choose meaning over money. Right to walk away from people who diminished me. Right to build a family based on love instead of performance. I had no idea that in just 6 months, the universe would force a confrontation I'd never planned for, one that would test every boundary I'd built and expose my family's betrayal in the most public way imaginable. But first, I had to receive a phone call that would change everything. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon in September 2024, while I was in the middle of a meeting about third-grade reading interventions. Ms. Chen Morrison, this is David Hart from the Governor's Education Task Force, the voice said, formal but warm. We'd like to discuss your appointment as the state's new Director of Literacy Innovation. It's a newly created position, and your work over the past 3 years makes you the unanimous choice. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Had to ask him to repeat it twice because the words felt too big, too impossible for someone my family had called mediocre. This wasn't just a promotion. This was a public appointment that would be announced at a televised state education summit, complete with a speech on stage with Governor Richardson himself. The karma of it all, the cosmic justice of receiving this honor while my family thought I'd simply drifted away, felt almost too perfect to be real. The news went public 3 days later, and that's when my carefully constructed silence shattered in the most shocking way possible. My phone, the new number they didn't have, stayed quiet, but my email inbox exploded with messages that made my stomach turn. Natalie, darling, I saw the announcement and I'm so proud of you. Call me when you can. We have so much to catch up on. Love, Mom. Victoria sent a similar email. Amazing news, sis? We should celebrate. Dinner at the club? James's message was the most transparent. Congrats on the appointment. Big opportunity for the whole family. Let me know if you need any legal advice on the contract. Not one apology. Not one acknowledgement of the 3 years of silence they'd imposed. Not one mention of the fact that they'd literally disowned me and banned my name from family gatherings. The betrayal of their sudden reappearance felt worse than the original abandonment, because now I could see exactly what I'd always suspected. Their love had always been transactional, and now the transaction looked good again. Rachel's encrypted email came an hour after theirs, and she was furious on my behalf. Natalie, they've been talking about your appointment non-stop in the family group chat. Your mother is telling everyone she always knew you'd find your way, and Victoria is planning what to wear to the ceremony like she's been your biggest supporter all along. I'm attaching screenshots. You need to see what they're really saying. I opened the files with shaking hands, and there it was. The family drama continuing exactly as it always had, just with a new script. My mother had written, "This is actually good for us. Natalie's position could open doors. We should all attend the summit." A state appointment wasn't just an honor. It was a camera, a headline, and a room full of donors. That's what they really wanted. James responded, "Agreed. I'll reach out about sitting in the family section. Good optics." The infidelity to everything family was supposed to mean was complete. They weren't happy for me. They wanted to use me, to hijack my moment for their own social capital. The screenshots kept coming, each one more calculated than the last, and I felt that old humiliation trying to creep back in. But this time, it met something stronger. Victoria had written, "Do you think they'll let family come up on stage for photos? That would be great exposure for the practice." My mother replied, "I'll make sure of it. Natalie will understand it's good for everyone." They were already planning their invasion, already assuming I'd let them back in like nothing had happened, like I owed them access to my success because we shared DNA. But here's what they'd forgotten in their 3 years of pretending I didn't exist. I'd learned to live without them. I'd learned that real family doesn't abandon you when you're not profitable and reappear when you are. The vengeance I felt wasn't about hurting them. It was about protecting what I'd built, about refusing to let them contaminate this achievement with their presence. I spent the next week ignoring their increasingly desperate attempts at contact while Rachel kept me updated on their group chat planning. "Your mom bought a new outfit specifically for the cameras," she told me. James is practicing his proud brother speech. They're treating this like it's their event, Natalie. Marcus found me crying in our bedroom one night, not from sadness but from rage at the sheer audacity of their behavior. "What do you want to do?" he asked, holding my hand like an anchor. "You don't owe them anything. You can block them again, or you can face them, or you can do something else entirely. Whatever you choose, Lily and I have your back." And that's when the idea formed, crystallizing in my mind with perfect clarity. I'd let them come to the summit. I'd let them sit in their fancy clothes with their practiced smiles. And then I'd show them, and everyone watching, exactly who my real family was. The evening before the summit, my phone rang from a number I'd almost forgotten I'd blocked. My mother's landline, the one I hadn't thought to add to my block list. I answered without thinking, and her voice came through like nothing had changed. "Natalie, finally. I've been trying to reach you since the announcement. I'll be at the summit tomorrow with Victoria and James. We're so excited to support you, sweetheart." The word sweetheart after 3 years of silent exile made me want to laugh or scream or both. "Mom," I said, my voice steady in a way it never used to be around her. "I got your email. And Victoria's. And James's." There was a pause, and I could hear her recalibrating, trying to figure out which version of herself to present. "Well, we're family, Natalie. Of course we want to be there for your big moment." And that's when I knew. She truly believed I'd forgive everything, that success would make me forget the screenshots, the group chat, the systematic erasure. The shocking part was that a small part of me still wanted to believe her, wanted to pretend the past 3 years hadn't happened. But I'd come too far to go back to being small. Rachel's message arrived at 11 p.m. the night before the summit, marked, "Urgent, read now," in the subject line. "Natalie, I can't let you walk into tomorrow blind. They're not just planning to attend. They're planning to take over your moment completely." I opened the attachment with my heart pounding, and there it was. A screenshot from 9:47 p.m. that same evening. My mother's message in the family group chat, laid out like a military operation. I spoke with someone on the planning committee. We're confirmed for the family section. Front row. When Natalie finishes her speech, we stand up together and approach the stage. Visual is everything. The betrayal of her manipulating her way into a choreographed ambush made me feel physically sick. But I kept reading because I needed to see how deep this went. James had responded with lawyer precision. "I've drafted talking points in case press asks for comments. Focus on always believing in her potential, and family values drove her success. Keep it vague but warm." Victoria added, "I told my hospital's PR team to be ready. They want to do a feature on the Morrison family's commitment to public service. This could be huge for my department's fundraising." I couldn't believe the level of coordination, the absolute shamelessness of their planning. They weren't coming to support me. They were coming to harvest publicity from my achievement like parasites who'd suddenly discovered their host was valuable again. The infidelity to every genuine family bond was complete. They'd turned my moment into their marketing opportunity, and they expected me to smile and play along because that's what the old Natalie would have done. But the worst screenshot was the last one, time-stamped 10:23 p.m., where my mother laid out the final details with chilling specificity. "The governor will want family photos after the ceremony. I've seen how these events work. Natalie will be overwhelmed and emotional, which means she won't think clearly about who should be in the photos. We position ourselves near the stage exit, so we're the natural choice when they ask for family." She'd actually studied the event format, planned their physical positioning, anticipated my emotional state to exploit it. The vengeance I'd been holding on to transformed into something colder, clearer. This wasn't about forgiveness or reconciliation or even understanding. This was about power, control, and their pathological need to be associated with success they'd actively tried to destroy when it didn't look impressive enough. Rachel's note at the bottom of the email said everything. "Natalie, I'm shaking typing this. Your mother literally said Natalie owes us this in a voice message to Victoria earlier. She believes you owe them access to your achievement because they're blood relatives, even after everything they did. James said something about how we made her tough by pushing her, and they're actually convincing themselves they deserve credit for your success. I can't stay silent anymore. If you want me to, I'll stand up at that event tomorrow and tell everyone the truth." I sat in the dark reading and rereading those words, and the shocking clarity of their delusion finally broke through my last bit of doubt. They hadn't changed. They weren't sorry. They just wanted what they'd always wanted, to use me as a prop in their performance of being an accomplished family. Marcus found me at 1 a.m., still staring at my laptop screen with tears of rage running down my face. "They have a script," I told him, my voice hollow. "They have talking points and photo positions and a PR strategy. They've turned my life's work into their publicity stunt." He read through the screenshots with this expression I'd never seen on his face, pure protective fury mixed with disbelief that people could be this calculating with their own daughter. "What do you want to do?" he asked for the second time in 2 weeks. And this time I knew exactly what my answer was. "I want them to come tomorrow. I want them to sit in their front row seats and wear their expensive clothes and practice their proud family smiles. And then I want to show everyone, every single person in that auditorium and every camera broadcasting this, who my real family is." The plan crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity as Marcus held me. I wouldn't mention them at all. Not one word, not one glance. When the time came to thank my family, I'd thank Marcus and Lily, the two people who'd chosen me when I had nothing impressive to offer, who'd loved me when my only credential was being a lowly teacher nobody wanted. The payback wouldn't be in exposing them, not yet. It would be in the deafening silence where their names should be, in the public documentation of their irrelevance to my success. I'd let them come, let them dress up and position themselves and wait for their moment, and then I'd give that moment to the people who'd actually earned it. The karma of it was perfect. They'd get exactly what they'd given me 3 years ago. Exclusion, erasure, the humiliation of being invisible while everyone else celebrated. And if they tried to force their way into my moment anyway, well, I had every time-stamped screenshot saved on my phone, ready to speak the truth my family had tried to bury. The State Education Summit filled the grand auditorium with 500 people, and I could feel the weight of every eye as I waited backstage in my navy dress. Simple, professional, nothing like the designer clothes my family would be wearing. Governor Richardson was reviewing notes beside me, and Dr. Hart was giving last-minute encouragement. But all I could think about was the front row where I knew my mother, Victoria, and James were sitting, probably checking their phones and rehearsing their proud family performance. Dr. Hart had already been warned. He'd seen the emails and he nodded once like, "Do what you need to do." Marcus and Lily were in the third row on the opposite side, Lily in her favorite yellow dress, holding a sign she'd made that said, "We love you, Mom," in crooked letters that meant more than any accolade. The betrayal of knowing my biological family was here to harvest credit, while my chosen family sat quietly just wanting to celebrate me, made everything crystal clear. I was doing the right thing, and whatever happened next was justice, not revenge. My name echoed through the auditorium. "Please welcome our new Director of Literacy Innovation, Natalie Chen Morrison." And the applause felt surreal as I walked to the podium with legs that somehow still worked, despite the adrenaline. I could see my mother in the front row, already positioning herself at the edge of her seat, ready to spring into action the moment I gave her an opening. The speech I'd prepared was about literacy, about public education, about the children whose lives could be transformed by the right intervention at the right time. But standing there, looking at the cameras and the faces and my real family waving from row 3, I knew I had to speak a different truth first. "Before I begin," I said, my voice steady in a way that shocked even me, "I need to thank the people who made this moment possible." The auditorium quieted, and I could feel my mother's anticipation like electricity in the air. 3 years ago, I was at the lowest point of my life, I continued, watching my mother's face shift from eager anticipation to confused concern. I'd been rejected by people I thought would always love me, told that my choice to become an educator made me mediocre, dismissed as someone not worth keeping in their lives. I couldn't believe that the people who were supposed to support me unconditionally had betrayed me so completely. The room was silent now, the kind of attention that comes when people sense they're about to witness something real. But in that darkness, I found my real family. Marcus. I gestured to row 3, where Marcus stood with tears already streaming down his face. You showed me that partnership means celebrating someone's calling, not competing with it. And Lily, my beautiful daughter. Lily was jumping up and down with her sign, completely uninhibited. You taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you're not impressive yet, who loves you when you're just a lowly teacher with big dreams and a small apartment. The applause started before I finished the sentence, building like a wave, and that's when my mother made her move. She stood up from the front row, straightening her Chanel jacket, and started walking toward the stage with Victoria and James flanking her like bodyguards. "Natalie!" she called out, her voice projecting that perfect blend of maternal concern and public performance she'd perfected over decades. "Sweetheart, what are you talking about? We're right here. We've always been here." The auditorium fell into shocked silence as security moved to intercept them, but she was already at the stage stairs, reaching for the microphone like she had every right to it. Security didn't rush her. They moved in calmly, the way people do when they're trained not to escalate. The infidelity of her attempting to hijack this moment, to rewrite history in real time with 500 witnesses, was so brazen it almost took my breath away. But I'd prepared for this. I'd known she wouldn't go quietly into irrelevance. "Governor Richardson, Dr. Hart," I said calmly, ignoring my mother's approach. "Would you mind if I shared something with everyone here?" The governor nodded, his face showing he understood this was important, and I pulled out my phone with hands that barely shook. On May 7th, 2021, at 9:47 p.m., my mother sent a message to our family group chat, a chat I'd been removed from without explanation. I'd like to read it now. My mother froze on the stage steps, her face draining of color as she realized what was happening. She wrote, "I've made a decision about Natalie. She is no longer someone I consider my daughter, and I'd appreciate if none of you mention her name at upcoming events." The collective gasp from the audience was audible, and I could see people pulling out their phones, recording, processing the shocking truth unfolding in front of them. That was over 3 years ago. I haven't spoken to her since. Not because I drifted away, but because she erased me for choosing meaning over money, purpose over prestige. The security team had reached my mother by now, gently but firmly guiding her back toward her seat as she sputtered protests that no one was listening to anymore. Victoria and James had already retreated to their seats, their faces buried in their hands in a humiliation that mirrored every dismissive look they'd ever given me. The entire auditorium rose to their feet in applause. Not polite ceremony applause, but the kind of standing ovation that comes from witnessing someone reclaim their dignity in real time. Governor Richardson put his hand on my shoulder and whispered, "That took courage. Finish your speech. They've got you." And I did, speaking about literacy and education and the children who deserved better. But everyone in that room knew the real lesson had already been taught. That karma doesn't always come when you expect it. But it comes. That payback isn't always about revenge. Sometimes it's just about telling the truth. That justice sometimes looks like a woman with screenshots and the courage to use them, standing on a stage her family thought they could steal, choosing her real family over the people who'd betrayed her, and finally, feeling free. The confrontation I'd been avoiding for 3 years found me anyway, in the corridor outside the auditorium 20 minutes after my speech ended. I was standing with Marcus and Lily, accepting congratulations from colleagues and strangers who'd been moved by what they'd witnessed, when my mother's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. "Natalie Morrison, you humiliated us in front of everyone. How dare you air private family matters in public like that?" She used my old name on purpose. She was flanked by Victoria and James, all 3 of them wearing expressions of righteous indignation that would have worked on the old me, the one who still believed their anger meant I'd done something wrong. But standing there with my real family beside me, I couldn't believe I'd ever let these people make me feel small, and the betrayal I'd carried for years transformed into something clearer. Pity for people so broken they'd turned love into a transaction they could withdraw at will. Private family matters? I repeated, keeping my voice level even as a small crowd began to gather, phones discreetly recording what they sensed would be the second act of tonight's drama. You mean the private family matter where you publicly removed me from your life, told everyone I drifted away, and then tried to steal credit for my success the moment it looked good on camera? Victoria stepped forward, her surgeon's authority voice activated. You're being dramatic, Natalie. Mom made one comment in a moment of frustration 3 years ago. Are you really going to destroy this family over ancient history? The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost admired the skill of it. But then Lily squeezed my hand and whispered, You don't have to talk to mean people, Mom. And that 7-year-old wisdom cut through decades of conditioning in a single sentence. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot folder I'd labeled Receipts 3 years ago, turning the screen toward them so they could see the evidence they'd forgotten existed. Ancient history, May 7th, 2021. You disowned me. September 12th, 2021. James told the family group chat I was an embarrassment. November 3rd, 2022. Victoria said I'd backstabbed this family by choosing teaching. Should I keep going? I have every time-stamped screenshot saved. The infidelity of watching their faces change from indignation to panic was almost satisfying enough on its own. And last night, I continued, scrolling to Rachel's most recent message. At 10:23 p.m., Mom, you wrote a detailed plan for hijacking my moment today, including the phrase, Natalie owes us this. So please don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was about love or support or family. This was about optics, and you got caught. James, ever the lawyer, tried to regain control of the narrative. Even if things were said in frustration, you're still our sister, Natalie. Family forgives. Family moves forward. The audacity of him using the language of forgiveness when none of them had apologized for anything made something inside me snap. Not into anger, but into absolute clarity. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice carrying down the corridor so everyone nearby could hear. Real family does forgive. Real family shows up even when you're not impressive. Real family doesn't come with conditions or contracts or calculations about whether you're worth the investment. I gestured to Marcus and Lily, who were watching this unfold with protective concern. I found my real family, people who chose me when I had nothing you valued, who celebrated my calling instead of mocking it, who taught me that love isn't something you earn with achievements or lose with choices. You taught me what family isn't, and I'm grateful for that lesson. But the tuition was high enough. I'm done paying. My mother's face crumpled in a way I'd never seen, and for a moment I saw genuine emotion break through the performance. Whether it was regret or just humiliation at being publicly called out, I couldn't tell and didn't care anymore. Natalie, please, she said, her voice smaller now. Don't do this. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. You can't just throw away 34 years because of some text messages. The way she minimized everything, 3 years of exile reduced to some text messages, systematic emotional abuse reframed as mistakes, reminded me exactly why I'd left in the first place. I'm not throwing anything away, I told her, my voice gentle but immovable. You threw me away 3 years ago. I'm just declining to be picked back up now that I'm convenient again. There's a difference. The shocking truth in those words hung in the air, undeniable even to them. Security had been hovering nearby, and Dr. Hart approached with apologetic authority. Ms. Chen Morrison, your car is ready whenever you'd like to leave. It was a lifeline disguised as logistics, and I took it gratefully. Mom, Victoria, James, I hope you understand that this ends here. No more emails, no more phone calls, no more attempts to rewrite history or insert yourselves into my life when it suits your image. I've built something beautiful without you, and I'm choosing to protect it. Victoria started to protest, but I held up my hand. You had 3 years to apologize, to acknowledge what you did, to do any of the actual work of reconciliation. Instead, you showed up with a PR strategy and talking points. That tells me everything I need to know about what I mean to you. The vengeance I felt wasn't hot or consuming. It was the cool satisfaction of finally, definitively choosing myself. I took Marcus's hand, scooped Lily onto my hip, and walked past my biological family toward the exit, toward our car, toward the life we'd built that had nothing to do with their approval. Behind me, I heard my mother crying, heard James trying to comfort her, heard Victoria's angry whispers about public embarrassment. But for the first time in my life, their drama didn't pull me back. The karma had completed its circle. The payback had been delivered not in cruelty, but in truth, and the justice I'd found wasn't in hurting them. It was in finally, fully, walking away free. The video went viral within hours. Someone in the auditorium had live-streamed the entire confrontation, and by midnight it had 3 million views with comments flooding in from people who'd lived their own versions of my story. "This is what family betrayal looks like," one comment read. "She didn't yell, didn't curse, just spoke truth with receipts. That's real power." Rachel called at 2 a.m., her voice shaking with something between laughter and tears. "Natalie, the family group chat is imploding. Your mother is having a meltdown, Victoria's hospital PR team is doing damage control, and James's law firm partners are asking questions. The country club gossip network is tearing them apart. Mrs. Henderson literally told everyone she always knew something was wrong with how they talked about you. The karma I'd believed in but stopped expecting was finally, devastatingly, arriving at their doorstep. The shocking part was that I didn't feel the triumph I'd imagined. I just felt tired and ready to let them face consequences that had nothing to do with me anymore. The social fallout accelerated over the following weeks in ways I watched from a careful distance, through Rachel's updates and occasional news mentions I couldn't completely avoid. My mother was quietly asked to step down from 2 charity boards. "Image concerns," they said. Though everyone knew it meant they'd seen the video and decided family abandonment wasn't a good look for organizations built on compassion. Victoria's hospital feature about the Morrison family's commitment to public service was canceled, and Rachel told me several colleagues had started questioning her integrity. If she could be that calculating with her own sister, what else is she capable of? The infidelity to their carefully constructed public image was complete, and the weapon they'd used against me, social reputation, professional standing, community perception, had turned on them with brutal efficiency. James's firm didn't fire him, but his path to partner stalled indefinitely after the managing partners watched him try to gaslight his sister on camera. But the real shift came 6 weeks after the summit, when Rachel forwarded me an email my mother had sent to her, clearly hoping Rachel would pass it along. "I've started seeing a therapist," it read, in my mother's distinctive formal tone that couldn't quite hide desperation bleeding through. "Dr. Morrison says I have issues with conditional love stemming from my own childhood, and that I've repeated patterns of emotional abandonment with Natalie that I experienced with my own mother. I'm working through this, trying to understand what I did and why I did it. I don't expect Natalie to forgive me. I'm not sure I'd forgive me either. But I want her to know I'm trying to become someone who deserves a second chance, even if she never gives me one." The humiliation of my mother admitting fault, even in this indirect way through therapy speak and third-party communication, felt like victory and tragedy mixed together. Part of me had waited 3 years to hear something like this, but now that it was here, it felt too little and too late, contaminated by the fact that she'd only started this work after public shaming forced her hand. Victoria's approach was different. A letter arrived at my office 2 months after the summit, handwritten on expensive stationery that somehow made the apology feel more genuine. "Natalie, I can't undo the years I spent diminishing your calling or making you feel less than because your success didn't look like mine. I watched that video 50 times, saw myself trying to gaslight you in front of strangers, and I couldn't believe I'd become someone capable of that cruelty. The truth is, I think I always resented that you found meaning in your work while I was chasing prestige in mine. And instead of examining that, I punished you for it. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a relationship. I'm just asking that you know I see it now, what we did to you, and I'm ashamed. I read it 3 times, looking for manipulation or hidden agenda, but it seemed sincere in its brokenness. The vengeance I'd imagined would feel satisfying just made me sad. Sad for all the years we could have had if they'd valued connection over status. Sad for the sister I might have been close to in a different version of this family. James never apologized, which somehow felt the most honest of all their responses. At least he didn't pretend to have changed when he hadn't. But Rachel told me he'd stopped talking about me entirely in family settings, had withdrawn into work, and started declining social invitations to events where he might be questioned about the incident. The payback for him was quieter, internal, the kind that comes from knowing you're the villain in a story millions of people watched and judged. My mother sent 2 more emails through Rachel, increasingly desperate, talking about family therapy and making amends and starting over. But every message still centered her feelings, her growth, her journey, without ever quite grasping that the work of reconciliation requires centering the harm you caused, not the enlightenment you've gained from causing it. The shocking realization was that even in their regret, even in their supposed transformation, they couldn't fully step outside themselves to see me as a separate person, worthy of consideration beyond how I made them feel. 6 months after the summit, I sat with Marcus and Lily at dinner, our normal Tuesday night routine of homemade pizza and discussing our days, when Lily asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Mom, are you sad about your other family?" I looked at this child who called me mom not because of biology but because of choice, at this man who'd married me when I was nobody's favorite, at this life we'd built that was so full I sometimes forgot there'd been a before. "No, sweetheart," I told her honestly. "I'm not sad anymore. I'm grateful. Grateful I learned the difference between keeping the peace and protecting my peace, between family that ties you down and family that lifts you up. Your dad and you taught me that. The dignity I'd reclaimed wasn't in their apologies or consequences or social downfall. It was in this moment, in this kitchen, with these people who'd proven that love without conditions wasn't just possible. It was better. The karma wasn't just what happened to them. It was what happened to me when I chose myself. And choosing myself meant understanding that some people earn second chances through genuine transformation and time, while others just earn the right to be released from your life with grace. My family was sitting at this table, covering Lily's pizza with too much cheese and laughing about her day at school, and that was enough. That was everything. So here's what I want to know. If you were standing on that stage, holding screenshots of your family's betrayal with 500 people watching, would you have stayed silent to keep the peace, or would you have spoken up to protect your peace? Because that's the real question, isn't it? We're taught that family is everything, that blood matters most, that forgiveness is always the right answer. But what about when the cost of keeping them in your life is losing yourself? I want you to comment below and tell me, have you ever had to choose between maintaining a relationship and maintaining your dignity? Have you been the lowly one in your family, the disappointment, the one whose choices were never good enough? Or maybe you're on the other side. Maybe you've realized too late that you treated someone like I was treated, and now you're trying to figure out if there's a way back. Tell me your story, because I know I'm not alone in this. Millions of you watched that video go viral, left comments about your own experiences with family drama and conditional love. So let's keep that conversation going right here. What would you have done differently? Would you have let them back in after they apologized? Or would you have kept those boundaries like I did? And here's the harder question. If you're the one who needs to apologize to someone you've humiliated or betrayed or cheated out of basic respect, what's stopping you from doing the real work of reconciliation instead of just wanting things to go back to normal? Drop your thoughts, your experiences, your questions in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, If you've ever felt backstabbed by the people who were supposed to have your back, or if you're trying to navigate the complicated mess of family betrayal and deciding what justice looks like for you, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Because I'm not done talking about the uncomfortable truths nobody wants to say out loud, about toxic families, about choosing yourself, about the difference between revenge and boundaries, about reclaiming your self-worth when everyone around you has tried to convince you you're not enough. These are the conversations that matter, the ones that help us see we're not crazy for wanting more than crumbs of affection from people who should be offering us full meals. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's keep having these raw, real, necessary discussions about what it means to protect your peace even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted. Your story matters, your healing matters, and you deserve a family, biological or chosen, that sees your worth without you having to prove it first.